Hello, everybody. You are listening to the new WCEG Network on WCEGTalkRadio.com. Or if you have time, listen to us on your smart TV. We're on YouTube, WCEG Network. My name is Rev Diane Dougherty, and I am the host of Take a Stand. With my partner, Demita Chapman, we interview activists working to expand democracy in our cities, state, and nation. And today is a wonderful, wonderful activist. Because we are all a worldwide community empowerment group, and we are now speaking life into the community. Feel free to like us on Facebook, subscribe, and encourage your network to do the same. You can also follow us on Twitter. On Instagram, I would like to have a disclaimer that we really need to promote, and that is that the topics and opinions of those show hosts and guests are not WCEG Network. Thank you for your continued support. We are very happy to have with us today a wonderful activist I met, whose name is Phillip Cuffey. Phillip is an activist in the city right next to mine, Decatur, Georgia, and he is working to restore justice to Decatur. Phillip is a seasoned real estate investor with a significant experience in restoration, property management, and sales. Phillip is experienced in historical property restoration, owner restoration for zoning variances, historical commission requirements, understands permit applications, building standards, community association negotiations, and is also property management and lease property transactions. That's a lifetime in of itself. But in his spare time, he is also co-chair of the Beacon Hill Black Alliance for Human Rights, a wonderful organization, and you'll be able to get this, the website in the chat section. He is also co-chair of Equity in Housing Committee in Decatur, mentors middle and high school boys at Decatur Housing Teen Center. And his pride and joy are the two children he has raised, Sana and Isaiah, both of which are Decatur High School graduates. And Sana is a graduate of Clark Atlanta University. His son Isaiah is graduating this year from UGA. So welcome, Phillip. Thank you for this introduction and for taking time out of your very busy schedule to be on WCEG Take a Stand. Now I will leave it to you. What is it that you would like to start this conversation with?
Well, I want to first thank you for welcoming me and giving me the opportunity to speak with you. I want to give honor and praise to God for blessing me with this opportunity. I also want to recognize my parents who made it all possible for me to be here in the community that I came from, Baltimore, Maryland. The neighbors, the teachers, my family, everyone who instilled that faith and energy in me to be the person that I am today. And I also must give honor and thanks to my wife, Constance, because she has helped make me the person that I am and bless me with the family that I have. So, and to give honor to the ancestors whose shoulders I stand on, and to be able to do the work that I've been doing since coming to the city of Decatur a little over 6 years ago now. And I want to talk to you as co-chair of the Beacon Hill Black Alliance for Human Rights and tell you about our mission. So let's start with the mission. And the Beacon Hill Black Alliance focuses on advocating, educating, empowering, and organizing people of African descent affected by systematic racism and oppression on issues of equity in housing, equity in education, and the legal system in the city of Decatur and the surrounding communities. And we first got started from a meeting that was called by Mayor Wilson, Mayor Emerita Wilson, Elizabeth Wilson. And that was a meeting in 2015, and she basically convened a group of volunteers to talk about the need to organize and to work on these issues. And we were first started as an organizing committee for the NAACP, and then we did not get a charter for that specific organization because there's already one for DeKalb County. So we then went the route of being independent and based it on Beacon Hill. So Beacon Hill is the original Black community in the city of Decatur. It's about 1 square mile, and it was first settled by enslaved Africans who became free around the 1880s and lived in that community, which is now effectively downtown in the city of Decatur. And let me let you have an opportunity to ask the next question.
Well, just as an aside, if I were going downtown Decatur and I were looking for Beacon Hill, what are some of the, just maybe 2 or 3 of the landmarks? Is there a sign that says Beacon Hill as if it was a subdivision? Are the streets just the Beacon Hill area? Has it been redesignated in another name?
Very good questions. So the biggest landmark that I would like to leave your viewers and listeners with is the Decatur High School. That is on McDonough Street. So that's one of the borders. And then on Trinity, which is the parking deck for the DeKalb County courthouse, which is right there on Trinity. And if you go to Water Street, which is a smaller street, so think of McDonough and Trinity, that intersection where the courthouse is to the north, and then the Decatur High School itself is a great landmark to know Beacon Hill. And recently there have been some signs posted, little toppers on the street signs that say Beacon Hill. So we're getting more recognition.
I love it. I love it. How many African Americans still live in the area?
That's a very good question. I can't tell you the exact number, but I can tell you that number has been dramatically reduced over time. And that has a lot to do with the policies that have been implemented that have, and also gentrification that has occurred. And we'll talk more about that as we go forward.
Before we go too much farther, can you give us a little understanding of what called you out to become an activist? Because one of the things that I love to hear about as I interview people on this show is, what are the primary instigating incidences that sit in your heart that push you into spending your free time when you could be doing leisure activities to be dipping into these very difficult and arduous and embedded areas of life that most people would just set aside and say, this is too much for me.
That's a very
Why'd you do it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think if you look at the roots of activism for me, and this might apply to others, it first begins, I think, with a strong sense of self, being comfortable in the skin that you're in and knowing that you have been gifted with the ability to learn and the ability to have some accountability toward yourself, to your family, and to your community. And then you also, for me, I have a strong belief in the power of one. One person can make a difference. One vote can make a difference. I think we've seen, and the power of organizing. Because when you get a small group of people who are organized, what they can achieve is almost limitless.
That's right.
And so that has really inspired me to be engaged. I can also share this because of my work with the housing equity team. You know how we're often driving about, and this has occurred to me with me recently. And many times you're driving and you see someone who obviously is in need, someone at a traffic stop, they're unhoused, they need services, and then there's that moment in time when you might have eye contact with them. That's a moment of truth. You either look at them, or you look away, or you ignore them. And for me, over time, those moments have been really something I had to come to terms with for myself. And so over time, I started saying, I got to do something about this. So I started getting first information in my phone, started collecting numbers of services that could be helpful. And I have the Georgia crisis number in my cell phone. I have the DeKalb County number for housing in my phone. So I started to collect these resources, and then a group of us started to form a working group. In fact, we have a meeting on Mondays, and we're pressing DeKalb County to do more with warming centers and facilities and wraparound services for those who are unhoused. And when you meet them, you find out that that's somebody's daughter or a sister, a mother or father. They're human beings, and we need to do better. And we need to be the squeaky wheels. And I'm okay with being that squeaky wheel, as being part of a team to do that and get more services for those who are in need.
Love it. At the heart of the gospel, the person that takes the telephone number and sees someone in their face, sees their eyes, and moves into their heart. So thank you very much. And I think that everybody who is an activist has that primary instigating incidents where their eyes meet the needs of someone and say, I can help you. Life doesn't have to be like this. So thank you very much for that witness. Now, I know and have been very impressed with the work that you have done with Decatur reparations. And on the show last year, we had the Chattahoochee Brick Company Descendants Coalition talk about what they are doing with the Chattahoochee Brick Company in terms of reparation. It's an ongoing process. Could you talk a little bit about Decatur reparations and what you all are doing in that with that?
Okay. First of all, let me just say, with reparations, the first thing I think of is the need for education. Education for those who have been harmed in terms of the policies, the laws, the practices that have harmed them. The harmers, the people who implement the policies. There may be policies that are operating today that are creating harm that the implementers might not be educated about and understand the facts behind and the result of those policies. Then there's education for those who have been harmed in terms of what's the recourse, what's the redress or remedy that needs to be defined with those individuals at the table, not some bureaucrat or someone even in the community outside of that group making decisions, but we really need to bring and educate those who have been harmed to the table so that they can be part of the process to define the remedy.
Love it.
I think that's so very important. So at this stage, the Beacon Hill Black Alliance for Human Rights, we're beginning to look at and define the harm that has occurred in our community through policies that have been implemented by the city, the county, or the state, but particularly the city. And it has resulted in displacement of individuals and families from their homes. And when you have that kind of displacement, what's the policy? Urban renewal was one of those policies that displaced groups of members of our community from the Beacon Hill area elsewhere. And in that displacement, they lost their, as you well know, the family wealth, because it's largely invested in real estate, as we see today. And they may have lost the ability to go to certain schools. So that is something that we're beginning to study. And to do that, we have to go into the archives of the city and other resources to begin to understand what happened, when it happened, and who it impacted.
Love it. As you were talking, I was thinking about my community and my nephew, whom I just talked to, and he said, well, why should we, that happened a long time ago, so why should we even discuss it? And in light of the CRT, critical race theory, yada, 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 there is going to be a pushback against even approaching this as an issue, much less a question. So what would you say to those who don't want to attend to this? They want to move forward. They don't want to move back.
I would say this. I would say that we should understand our history. We should know the facts. So it should be very factually driven in terms of what happened. And it really wasn't so long ago. Granted that there was 246 years of chattel slavery. There was 150 years of government sanctioned rules, regulations, and policies that suppressed and oppressed many Black, Brown, and Indigenous people in the United States. There's also examples of that happening in the city of Decatur. And so we want to understand what happened from a factual standpoint, and let us go to where the facts lead us. And it's not so long ago there are people who are living today who were affected by policies that of urban renewal in the 1960s. And we have the documents to show that it did happen and it did have an impact on their lives. There's a reason why I think the statistics that I read about the average white family net worth is around 171,000. And for people of color, particularly Black people, it's about 17,000. Is it fair for anyone to believe that that's that outcome is for some reason other than what has been contributed through policies that have harmed our community for hundreds of years?
One of the things you said at the very beginning was important, and that is education. And the kind of education that we offer, education needs to be received. There needs to be a tuning in of the facts and tuning into the communities that you've moved into. You said you've only been here 6 years. I've been here 8, but my friend who has been here for 50 years has watched the African American community that she once belonged to disappear. She's 89 now. She said there's only 2 Blacks on the street. They all sold out. Her churches are gone. The church she used to go to. She worked with the homeless. She ran one of the first homeless shelters. And I personally am very concerned about the movement of the African American community out of Atlanta, out of our cities, for the very reason that you brought up, that their wealth is very minimal. And that it's been made that way within the last 50 years. So in terms of policy and practices, what policies and practices need to change in order to stop the migration of the people in our cities, of people of low wealth in our cities?
Reverend Diane, I'm glad you asked that question. One of the examples of policies that have negatively impacted the growth and the potential of the Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities has been redlining. Many of your viewers will know redlining as the practice of evaluating credit risk. It first came out in 1933. We all know that that was a time during the Depression, and many people were not able to work, and they got behind in their mortgages. And the federal government put forward a program called the Homeowners Mortgage Corporation, and essentially bundled those mortgages that were defaulting and refinanced them so that people could stay in their homes and get back on their feet. And so that was 1933, 1934, when FHA, the Federal Housing Administration, started. They used those same maps of the red districts, and those red districts where they deemed risk highest were in the Black and Brown communities. So those communities were literally starved of capital for people to get mortgages, for people to get equity loans, to improve their homes, to increase the value. And since redlining has now, over the years, has been exposed for what it is, guess what? A new redlining emerged. And the new redlining was with zoning. And exclusionary zoning meant that single family homes was designated throughout the communities in the city of Decatur starting in 1988. And the premise of making that change, so in other words, it excluded duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes, the kind of places where individuals could easily afford, more easily afford, and live within communities that had single family residences. So it was a nice mix. But in those times of the around 1980s, when there were about 100 or so vacant properties in the Oakhurst community of the city of Decatur, it was believed that a lot of absentee landlords were not taking care of their properties. So by restricting zoning to single family homes, it excluded more duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. And it just didn't happen in the city of Decatur. It happened across the country in a lot of metropolitan areas. So over time, what you had was barriers being raised to prevent people of lower means to come into communities because they could not afford the single family homes that were these neighborhoods were restricted to. So what we've done about it is that we've actually pushed for the city to recognize it, educate them on what they've done with this policy, educate them on how it's harmed their diversity goals, which they love to tout, that they're a diverse city, but the fact is our diversity has decreased from about 80, Oakhurst community at one point was about 80% African American and people of color, and now it's down to 22%. And that's because of these kinds of policies and what's happening in the market. The real estate market is hot, so it's fueling a lot of building. And if you're not in a historic district, then you're going to see where a lot of homes are being, ranch homes are being raised,
Yes.
and McMansions are being built, or they're taken off the roof and going up a second story and tripling the value of the property. The high taxes are impacting our elders. They can't stay in place, age in place. And so we continue to press our commissioners in the city of Decatur to eliminate single family zoning and bring back duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. And the city is engaged in that campaign, and they're going to be proposing such a change in 22.
I love that. Thank you so much. That is real activism that is going to have an impact. And maybe it will spread to Avondale Estates, where I live.
That would be
great.
nice.
A nation,
Yes.
a nation of change. Well, I mean, you were talking about the work you're doing in reparations, and that would be one of the ways I would think that Decatur could repair the damage and harm that has been done to the African American community or to the poor. What other movements have you put in place, that are you putting in place, that are big ideas not achieved yet, but hopeful for the future of Decatur?
Well, I think our vision is to have equity, to essentially, we want what everyone else wants. We want to be in a community that is safe, a community that's vibrant, that's walkable, has the amenities of safe places for our children to have fun, and restaurants we can enjoy and enjoy our family time. And what we envision is really taking the steps to ensure that for members of our community.
Explain equity. Explain what you mean by equity.
Yeah, so equity is essentially having the same opportunity as everyone else. So if you think of it in terms of starting a race, we want to be at the starting line with our proper shoes on and ready to go when the starter gun goes off. We do not want to find ourselves in the locker room because our equipment isn't ready, or for some reason we are not able to get to that starting line. And what we've seen in the past is, with a lot of these policies, it has hampered our ability to get to that starting line at the sound of the gun and get ready, get set, and be able to go when everyone else has heard the sound to do just that. So equity is fairness. Equity is given an opportunity for all the services that we look forward to having, be it in education, healthcare, and in business, being able to get loans, being able to get access to capital. All of these are the kinds of resources that come under the umbrella of equity.
In Decatur, and also Avondale Estates, this whole area around here, it's pretty wealthy. So when you talk about equity for the people of the area, it seems like there's a class of people that would, by nature, be left out because they don't make enough money even to enter the city to participate in its schools or live in a healthy housing. When you envision people coming to Decatur and being able to live here, do you think about how much money they would need to make in order to just be at that lower end of making ends meet?
Yes, it's getting further and further out of reach for many people who work, let's say in the service industry,
Yes.
or someone that's a teacher even, who works for the city of Decatur to afford.
As an example of that, I was a teacher for 47 years, and I could never live in the cities I taught in because I couldn't afford the housing. I always had to travel to find, and I never thought much about it, but it's an issue.
It's a very big issue, Reverend Diane. In fact, that has, if you had a chance to look at the 1619 project.
Oh, yes.
There's an article in that report that speaks to the traffic in Atlanta, and it makes the connection on why the traffic in Atlanta is so difficult. And it has a lot to do with the fact that the people cannot afford to live where they work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's creating an enormous amount of demand on access to the highways. And that is fundamentally a problem that people are faced with. And so when I think of ways that we can change that, it really starts with educating and educating the people who are in position to change policies. But I'm not naive to think that alone will be the fix. It also includes opening doors for better financial opportunities for people to work in, to be trained. So it's education. So it's a layered, complex and layered solution. And a lot of things would have to be addressed and working at the same time to change that. But I think it's possible, and it's certainly worth the effort to organize and make those changes that I'm going to see in my lifetime.
See, to me, that's real restoration. And I was reading your history and I'm thinking, you do historical restoration of historical properties, but what you all are doing through the Black Alliance, the Beacon Hill Black Alliance, is you're restoring the community to itself, to its diverse roots. And I so appreciate that. I taught in Catholic schools forever, and I'd always say, well, where's all the Black people? And I never made the connection between the cost of Catholic education that people paid to have a Catholic education and the probable movement of people out of diverse situations because they were racist.
And you're not alone in that evolution, because as I was growing up in Baltimore and I went to my neighborhood school, which is in the west side of town, as an elementary school student, and then when I had a chance to attend a private school on scholarship, and I took 2 buses across the city, and it probably took me a little over an hour to get back and forth to school, I would see how the neighborhoods dramatically changed.
Yes.
And I would wonder, why is this? It changed physically, it changed demographically. And as a kid, I was saying, well, this is the way it is. But it wasn't until, once again, the education is the key, that I began to really understand how this is not coincidence. This is systemic. This is a function of legal policies. This is a function of practices that purposely placed certain people in certain areas and deny them of equity in terms of better ways to improve themselves. And that explains to a large degree why we're so segregated, even after the fair housing has long been passed, and the segregated the Board versus Brown Education, the segregation of schools has long been passed. It took the city of Decatur 18 years to fully desegregate its schools, 18 years after Brown versus Board. So change can be arduous and difficult, but we need to be the catalyst, the spark, to make sure that change does not falter. And that's why this work is so important.
What do you think of vouchers
Well, yeah, vouchers is,
and school choice?
yeah, school choice and vouchers, I think it needs to be looked at. And once again, if you go to the community that's impacted and get those individuals at the table, for them, I'm a strong believer in self-determination, which is one of the Kwanzaa principles that I really like, Kuji Chagalia. Self-determination is so important, and that's a key point of reparations. We have to get those who have been impacted or their descendants at the table, or those who are in somewhat other related category that were harmed. We have to get them at the table so that they can define what a redress or remedy looks like. I can give you an example of one that, in terms of aspirational thoughts I have, and that is for those families that were pushed out because of policies, like I mentioned, at the federal level, at the state level, county or city level, but particularly in this case at the city level, we would want those descendants and those families to have the opportunity to benefit from the schools in the city of Decatur.
Right.
That is a way of redress that could be very helpful to the future of the descendants of people who have been harmed. So that's just one example, I think, that should be engaged and entertained if those individuals at the table decide that that's a path they would like to take.
I love it. And the other issue that I find is the manipulation of school monies through vouchers to create or take money out of the school system for themselves to maintain a racial, to maintain a white racism.
It's very disturbing.
I hate to say that, but I think that is the conversation that we need to have. What is the purpose of taking monies out of public school budgets and putting them into private schools where people already can pay for it themselves, and those vouchers really are not needed?
Yes, in that example, that's clearly problematic for me to justify that shifting of resources, just as it's problematic for me to look at this State Bill 888 that they're trying to get momentum on, that's going to penalize schools that are teaching facts and history that might not appear to some to be the right thing to teach. To penalize at 20% of funding is not the way to go, and I would hope that the state legislature would not support such a bill.
I think for the listeners, House Bill 888 has to do with allowing people that have a complaint about what is taught in a classroom by a teacher or what is put in the curriculum, if there's an administrator that that they've been offended by, that parent can make a complaint to the school itself. And if that doesn't work, they can go to the school board. And if that doesn't work, they can go to the state school board. And if the system is, or if the complainant is agreed with, 20% of school funds will be taken out of the budgets of those schools, which could add up to millions and millions of dollars. So we're not really sure how critical race theory is going to be defined by this group. It's a small group, but it's a very loud group. But we do know that it has become a political cudgel, and everybody should be alert and aware.
Diane, thank you for sharing that. I would like to share something about the Beacon Hill history that I think is very important, and it has to do with our galvanizing around the Lost Cause monument that was in the city square. But before I talk about, but to understand why that monument came down, one needs to understand why it was erected in the first place. And to appreciate why it was erected, you should also note that it's erected on land that is sacred. And we have a committee in our group called the Decolonize Decatur Committee, and they've worked very arduously in this area. The land that we are on now, it's the 200th anniversary of DeKalb County, and next year it's going to be the 200th anniversary for the city of Decatur. Well, this is sacred land that was under signed treaties and Supreme Court decision that the land was part of the Muskegee Creek Nation. And in 1836, there was an Indian war with 3,500 fatalities, and about 20,000 of the Creek Nation went in a trail of tears away from this land, and they went to Oklahoma and Alabama, leaving this land for settlement. And so we need to honor the fact that this land is stolen, and the labor of my ancestors was stolen as well to create the wealth, in part, that we are beneficiaries of today. That monument was erected in 1908 by the Daughters of the Confederacy, and it was part of a narrative that would make the Confederacy heroes and minimize the importance of slavery in the narrative of the Civil War. The placement of that monument was in front of our old courthouse, where Black and brown people would register to vote and cast their ballots. So it really was a symbol of propaganda to intimidate Black and brown people and to remind them of their place. Well, we rallied around taking down that monument, and we engaged and supported the Decatur High School Black Student Union. So those students were out up front. They had a rally in 2017 at the Beacon Hill Plaza, and where we have placed a statue. We're going to talk about that next. We also had a march in 2018, and then in 2019, emphasizing the importance of bringing that monument down. We probably know that the state legislation passed a bill that made all monuments in the state of Georgia untouchable. But still, we persisted. And after the tragic murder of George Floyd, we were even more engaged and fired up in our protests. And it was on June 18th of 2019 that the order was issued by Judge Seliger to take down the monument because it was a public nuisance and a safety hazard. So we were able to bring that monument down, and that was an important victory for our community.
And I was so proud to look at if you go online and look at Lost Cause, and is it on the Beacon Hill Alliance website? Did I find it? Or was I looking at Decatur Reparations? Where did I find the video of that great event?
It may very well have been on our website. It's in a number of places, but it was quite a victorious event that no longer divides our community. So we all benefit from not only the Lost Cause monument coming down. But 50 yards away was the 1836 relic, the cannon, which also came down last fall. And it was again through the work of organizing and activism. So that's the rewards. We have to celebrate our small victories as well as the large ones, but we would not stop with just removing of these symbols of oppression and white supremacy, but we're also in the process of installing other pieces of art that's reflective of our community. And we did that in the Beacon Hill Plaza, which is located between the Decatur Police Department and the school board. And it's also off of Trinity and Electric Avenue where the Decatur Recreation Center is. Actually, it's the Ebster Recreation Center. And so we erected what Sonia said, which is a 10-foot tall Afro inspired, as well as indigenous people figure of inspired the author Alex Swavani, who's an Atlanta-based sculptress. And she was inspired by a Philadelphia poet by the name of Sonia Sanchez. Her poem is Catch the Fire. And in that poem, she speaks about the fire that's in our DNA that went from ancestor to ancestor to our present. And that DNA, that fire, is the fight for resistance, resisting oppression and gaining our light, our true light, in terms of our fulfillment of who we are and what we can be in terms of achieving our full potential. So I invite all your viewers to come to the city of Decatur, come see what Sonia said, take a picture and post it, because it will make you feel a great sense of uplifting sensation, and as a tribute to the great work that we're doing.
Amazing, and it is amazing. I'm so proud to know you, and
you.
I have to talk about the uncomfortability that I live with. Just knowing what you have gone through and the complicity of the white community that just stands and observes. Whether someone is, I have a picture that I keep of a young guy. I think in 1946, he was the last African-American to be hung. And there's like 20,000 people that came to see it. And I have a picture of all of these people in their Sunday clothes gathered around watching the community hang someone else. And I think, what is wrong with us? What is wrong with us? I'm a religious leader. And our religious leaders, I mean, I've never heard a sermon on racism in our churches. Never. I've never heard, we, among ourselves, we talk about racism, but it's not our lived experience. My lived experience is one of being a bystander, allowing someone else to come and do that. And my uncomfortability has gotten to explosive, an explosive tone where I've said, no, I'm not going to stand by anymore. And I'm hoping that African Americans understand that what you are doing is beneficial to someone like me and to many people who don't know what to do, because we are not activists. We are bystanders that sit back and allow this, in a sense, to happen, or say, it's not my problem. I hope someone will take care of it. Because we live in a hierarchical community where someone's in charge. And that's not our duty, and we don't cross lines. but I quit doing that a long time ago. So I so admire you and the work that you're doing. And I hope everyone gets a chance to go see that beautiful sculpture and read the poem. If you can find the poem, will you send it to me? And I'm going to put it online. But before we leave, we just have a few minutes left. One of the conversations we haven't had is about legislation that's in the mixed. House Bill 40, 20 years in the making, that this activism, it's not for 1 year or it's not for 2 years. This has been 20 years and it still hasn't gone through. Could you talk a little bit about House Bill 20, which is a reparations? It's a commission just to study and develop reparations proposals. The title of it is a commission to study and develop reparation proposals for African American Act. And it was put in 1989. It keeps renewing itself every year. I think it's, is it Shirley Jackson Lee that sponsors it, has sponsored it these last few years?
Yes,
it was coming up.
It was Representative John Conyers out of Michigan who originally sponsored, along with others, the bill. And it's really symptomatic of, Rev Diane, what you were saying earlier about sort of the absence of hearing about racism, the uncomfortableness of addressing it, and feeling comfortable just relegating it to someone else to handle or to deal with. We have to look at America's original sin for what it is, follow the facts, become a truth seeker, because that's one of my unofficial titles, because I do want to follow the facts to the truth. And the fact is that it's taken that bill so long just to get out of committee is an indication of just how reluctant the majority of our representatives are to be uncomfortable with the truth, to recognize the harm that has been done for all these years. In fact, I think I calculated, if you look at the 246 years of chattel slavery, the 150 years of government sanctioned Jim Crow and segregation laws, it comes up to be something like 20, 22 or 23 generations of people that had to endure the kind of harm that's been inflicted upon them. And just as we have models, we have the Truth and Reconciliation effort in South Africa. Mm-hmm. We have the folks in Evanston, Illinois, and Asheville, North Carolina, and Providence, Rhode Island, that are all beginning to take steps to address the need to look at our history and look at the facts, and let's get to a point where we can recognize them for what they are and just do the study. The education is the first step in reparations. Let's get the education and then go from there. And too many of us are reluctant to do that, and that has to change.
Well, you are an inspiration to me, and many of African Americans are inspiration to me because you are true activists. And when I look at the white community, I don't find that at all. There are some, of course, my friend Paul, Shy Paul, yes. He's an activist par excellence and really works to get things done.
Paul McClellan, yes.
He's a wonderful, wonderful person. But we are inspiring each other. You are a tremendous inspiration to me to keep on going. And I don't even know what I'm doing or where I'm going or what all of this is about. But I do know that God is with us, and there's a movement of the Spirit that is pushing away all of the efforts to cover this over again. And we all have to stand with our arms joined. It's not just your problem. We also have to offer you shelter, protection, and space to gain access to your voice so that we can make a world for your children better than the one that we grew up in. I'm kind of glad all of these systems are breaking down.
I am too, and I think what we saw in the last couple of years with the protests after George Floyd's murders, what was striking was the number of protests that were occurring in places where there weren't many people of color. And
Yes.
there were young people, there were middle-aged people, there were old people, and they may not have been of color, but they recognized the humanity of George Floyd, and that the systems that brought his demise into play. And that helps me to be a little more optimistic that change is possible, but I'm all the more persistent to continue to do the work, because you can't expect results without putting in the work. I think it was Frederick Douglass who said, power concedes nothing without demand. We have to make demands for change in a positive way.
Well, I'm glad that you are making these demands, and I appreciate the community that I'm living in, because I know that your message and what you're doing is being heard. And you can also listen to a lot of us who stand with you in invisible energy that is pushing the boundaries wherever we find blockades. So we have just a few more minutes before we call this, and I wondered if you wanted to talk about anything else that you think is important for our listeners to hear.
Yes, I would like to say that they should see our website, beaconhillblackalliance.org. Come visit the website and see our committees and accept the invitation to be engaged, to find an organization that is at the front line of fighting for equity in our community, that will allow us to get all the benefits that many of us do receive, but some of us are not getting. So we want to undo the inequitable practices and policies, change them, or replace them with more equitable practices and policies, so that our community can really grow and be diverse and be the kind of place that the city of Decatur touts itself to be. It is a goal. They want to be standing with earning these awards for diversity and live up to them in true fashion. So I say that to say, join us and be engaged and help be part of the change that you expect to see.
Do you have to be Black?
You sure don't. In fact, we have members that are the colors of the rainbow. So we only ask that you support us as a member, get on a committee, follow through with volunteering. We do have some events that are coming up. Last year we had our first Pan-African Festival, where we brought
It was wonderful. And it extended to Avondale.
Yes, and we supported our local business, so that's good. That's to helping our local business thrive in these trying times. So the date is August 20th, 2022 in Decatur Square. And once again, we will have a Pan-African Festival that will be representative of our community and welcoming to all members in the Decatur and Avondale estates and the surrounding area. So we look forward to another successful event on August 20th, 2022.
Yes, no more COVID.
Yeah, we hope it will be tamed at that point and we could do the things we're used to doing.
Amen. Well, God has really blessed us with your presence and your commitment to this community. You are truly a leader and a humble leader. And
Thank you.
what I would like people to go away with is the understanding that you don't have to do great things. All you have to do, I mean, a lot of us say, oh, well, I could never do all of that. You could do one little thing. If you feel called or uncomfortable with the way that your vision of our community exists today, look at beaconhillblackalliance.org and see if there's something there that calls you, because I'm a big believer in being called out. You can write postcards, you can come to a rally, you can donate, because they have a little donate button. And I also want to say thank you to WCEG for giving us an opportunity to have this platform so that we can talk about these wonderful, gifted people in our community that are making changes for the better. So thank you very much, Phillip. It has been an you are inspiring, and it's been an inspiring hour. So I am Rev Diane Dougherty. This is Take a Stand on WCEG Talk Radio, and we will see you, I think, February 7th with our next great conversation. Thank you, Phillip.
Thank you to Reverend Diane and all your team for a wonderful job that you do.